It's so great to be here, and I love the fact that Prince was playing as my entrance music. I still miss Prince. I think about that man. I'm not gonna say every day. I'm gonna say every third day. Every third day I'm like, man, I miss Prince. Hello, Minneapolis. It's so great to be here with you on this beautiful day. Thank you for being here, and thank you. And thank you, like, listening to those speeches about the people that have been believing in me. I mean, it almost made me tear up. Let's give them a round of applause, the people that have worked hard to bring us here today. And particularly the comments about, hey, like, the woman who was going online and battling with Trump supporters and then realizing that that was not the path forward. I have to say, I can relate to that myself, where over a number of years, I was in despair around 2009. It was the financial crisis. The financial crisis was a bleak time around much of the country. And at that time, I had a bunch of friends who'd literally been on Wall Street selling mortgage-backed securities. And you know, it's like, and you can't like hate them because they're theoretically your friends, but you're like, man, like that's some really like pretty shitty work. And so I quit my job to start an organization called Venture for America to do something about it. And I have to say the big theme is that you can feel bad about what's going on in this country, but then the moment you feel like you're doing something about it, you feel so much better. You feel like this weight lift. And that's hopefully what this campaign will be. This campaign will be a way forward for the people of this country to start doing the work of rebuilding our communities from the ground up, from people up, from communities up, from families up. That's where we need to go in this country. So if you're here today, you probably gathered I am not a career politician. Yeah, some of you like that. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a problem solver, I'm someone who's been trying to improve things for the last number of decades. And the problem that's been afflicting this country for the last 2+ years is a problem that, for whatever reason, there's a lot of confusion around. And the problem is this: how did Donald Trump become our president in 2016?
Because people were sick of politics as usual.
So my man in the front says because people were sick of politics as usual. I think there's a lot of truth to that. What are the other reasons that people, if you just turned on CNN and you said, like, why is Trump our president? What were the reasons that you'd be absorbing from CNN? Russia is a big one, right? Like, if you just turned on cable, you'd be like, why is Trump our president? Russia. What else? Facebook. Yeah, Facebook might be another reason. Hillary Clinton might be another reason. Racism is another thing that's out there, definitely. But I looked at the numbers. I looked at the math. I love this campaign. People cheer for math and there are math signs. And what does math stand for? Math stands for Make America Think Harder. So if you look at the numbers, the reason why Donald Trump's our president is this. We automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Iowa, all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And I know for you here in Minnesota, you're used to being a blue state. Although I'm sure there are some Trump supporters here in this crowd, and that's cool because the Yang Gang gets people from all points in the political spectrum. Thank you. So Minnesota was solidly blue, and then Minnesota, people were like, wow, like Trump almost won Minnesota. You guys know that, right? He came within like a point. And then there are people here in Minnesota who've been longtime Democrats and progressives, and we're in a real progressive haven here in Minneapolis. We're like, how the heck did this state almost go red? That was a bit of a freak out for people here. And it's the same reason why Missouri, Iowa, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which is also pretty reliably blue, why they all went red, is that we'd automated away these 4 million manufacturing jobs. We're depleting communities from around the country. And my friends in Silicon Valley know full well that what we did to the manufacturing jobs, we are now going to do to the retail jobs, the call center jobs, the fast food jobs, most disastrously the truck driving jobs, and on through the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live? Yeah. And why are those stores closing? That's right, Amazon. It's a one-word answer. Amazon's sucking up $20 billion in business every year, and it's pushing 30% of Main Street stores and malls to close. What do you all think the most common job in this country is? Retail, that's right. The average retail worker is a 39-year-old woman making between $10 and $11 an hour, and we know she does not have a whole lot in savings. So what happens to that retail worker when the mall or store she's working in closes? How many of you saw the recent Google AI demo where they demoed software that can call and make appointments for you? Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
What do you all think the time frame is on AI being able to outperform the average call center worker?
5 years.
This man's saying 6 months. Someone says already possible. Now, when you call a company right now and you get that bot, that customer service bot, you probably do the same thing I do, which is you pound 0 and just say the word human into the phone over and over again, right? You're like, human. No, he's like, no, I like the bot. That's what I do. I'm pounding 0. But I know, and you all should know, that within 2 or 3 years, the bot is going to be indistinguishable from a human. The bot's going to pick up the phone like this. Hey, Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? And I'll be like, I need this. And be like, sure thing. And I'll be like, that was delightful. We're 2 years away from that, and that's going to be great for those of us who are calling companies, but it's going to be terrible for the 2.5 million Americans who work in call centers right now who make on average $14 an hour. Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states in this country. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in the US. The average truck driver, 94% men, average age 49. So the people you think of as truck drivers, that's pretty much a truck driver. And I've hung out in truck stops, and those are truck drivers. Oh, thank you. Look at that. Look at the survey. Oh my notes like that. Hey, live stream. So this is all being live streamed as well. So say hello to the internet.
Andrew Yang!
Yes. Tell the internet what you see.
Andrew Yang!
Yeah, I love this campaign. So my friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves. Now, why do they want to make self-driving trucks so bad? For the most American of reasons, money. $168 billion in cost savings and fuel efficiency and equipment utilization, because a human-driven truck has to stop after 14 hours and then the driver has to get out and go to sleep. And that's like a rule. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm up. No, that truck's gonna start barking at you and make you stop. But the robot truck never needs to stop. They can just go 24/7. And what's gonna happen to the 3.5 million truck drivers and the over 7 million Americans who work at truck stops, motels, diners, and retail establishments that actually rely on the truck drivers getting out and getting a meal? What happens to them when the robot trucks start hitting? And only 13% of truck drivers are in a union. So this is not like a grand negotiation. 87% of them are just individual proprietors. A lot of them took out loans and have their life savings tied up in trucks. It's like, imagine having tens of thousands of dollars in loans you took out for your truck and then having to compete with a robot truck that does not stop. How is that going to shake out? Not well. Tens of thousands of truck drivers are ex-military. And dozens of them protested in Indiana recently. They did something called a slow roll. I think this is important to know. So what they did is they just lined up on a highway and just started driving their trucks at 45 miles an hour. And everyone behind them was like, what the hell is going on? Why is this highway going 45 miles an hour? And these truckers were protesting. What were they protesting? They were protesting the digital monitoring of their driving time. It was like, I don't like having this thing watching me, so I'm going to protest. How do you think they're going to react when it's a robot truck that's going to take their livelihood?
Up in arms. Not good.
You think that Donald Trump's the worst of it? We are in the third inning of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of the country. What people are calling the fourth industrial revolution. And for all of the issues with Trump, Trump is not the disease. He is a symptom.
Yes.
He's a manifestation of this economic transformation. It is not immigrants that are causing these problems around the economy. It is technology. Am I right, Minneapolis?
Yeah!
So this is what I was seeing in 2016 and 2017. I was like, oh my gosh, Donald Trump won. Like, I have to figure out what the heck just happened. And then I figured out, okay, it's an economic technology story. And then our culture seems very confused about the problem. It's like we're not acknowledging that this is the greatest economic transformation in the history of the country. So I went to Washington, D.C., and I'm a pretty cool guy, so I can meet with very important people. And I went with this set of facts. I was like, what are we going to do about the fact that Americans are getting pushed into distress, the third inning, Donald Trump's in the White House, it's about to take off. Because AI is about to leave the hype stage, which has been in for a long time, and it's about to hit the actually commercially useful stage. Like, we do not have limitless time. And what do you think the good folks in Washington, D.C. said to me when I asked them, what are we going to do about this?
Retrain for jobs.
You didn't know.
Retrain.
So the top three answers I got were, number one, we cannot talk about that. Yeah, that deserves a boo, am I right? We should bring those folks from D.C. over here so you can boo them. Number two, we should study that.
Boo!
And number three, the most popular, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future.
Boo!
Now, I'm for retraining. I mean, you have to be pretty negative, be like, I mean, it'd be great, but you have to look at the numbers, right? Look at the numbers. How effective do you all think government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers in the Midwest? If you had to throw a number out there, how do you think it was?
13%.
This man says 2%. That person's saying 1%. It was 0 to 15%. So then when I said to the government official, hey, we are terrible at retraining, and I looked at the studies, it's like 0 to 15%. This is more or less an imaginary answer. You know what they said to me? They said, I guess we'll get better at it. And I realized that this is what passes for intelligent conversation in Washington, D.C. And finally, someone told me the truth when I was in D.C. He said to me, he was like doing me a favor. He was like, Andrew, you're in the wrong place. No one in this town is going to do anything about the problems that you're describing. Because this is not a town of leaders, this is a town of followers. And the only way we are going to do anything about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads in Washington, D.C. And that is why I'm here with you on this beautiful day, Minneapolis. Will you help curb that wave? We have to wake up our leaders. And so if you're here today on this beautiful sunny afternoon, you have probably heard this. There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. And all those things are true. But instead of a gimmick, this idea actually has been with us since the founding of the country. Thomas Paine was for it. At the beginning, he called it the citizens' dividend. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrate every year, championed it in 1967, called it the guaranteed minimum income. And in his book, Chaos or Community, he said, this is where we must go, and this is what he was fighting for when he was killed the next year in 1968. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists signed a study saying a guaranteed income would be tremendous for America, and it was so mainstream that it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971, came this close to being law. And then 11 years later, it actually did become law in one state, where now one state has a dividend where everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? And how do they fund it? Oil! And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology!
Technology, that's right. Data, technology, AI, software, this is the oil of the 21st century. And what they're doing for the people of Alaska with oil, we can do for everyone here in Minnesota and everyone around the country with technology. In Alaska, they call it the oil check, and they love it. And we're gonna call this the tech check, and you and the rest of America are gonna love it. I was just in Seattle, home of Amazon. How much did Amazon pay in federal taxes last year?
Yeah.
That's right. How the heck did a $1 trillion tech company pay less in taxes than you all? Like, how the heck is that possible? And that's not even unusual. They regularly pay zero taxes. And you know what was happening in an HQ? The accountants went to Jeff and said, Jeff, we've got great news. It's another zero tax year for Amazon. And then Jeff said, that's fantastic. And then he went to the vault and then he busted out giant wads of cash and he gave them to the accountants. And the accountants were like, yes. Then the accountants went home in their cars and then put the wads of cash in their vault and then went into the vault and started doing like a Scrooge McDuck cash back. They're like, yes, my annual ritual, Jeff's happy with me. And this is not, believe it or not, this is not their fault. They're just doing their jobs. They're excellent accountants, I'm sure. It is our fault, that's right. How did we design a system so weak and messed up that $1 trillion tech company can pay zero in taxes? Am I right?
Yeah.
So when people are like, how are we gonna fund the dividend? How are we gonna make this real? All you have to do is look up, where's the money going? This $1 trillion company is soaking up $20 billion a year in business, causing 30% of Main Street stores and retailers to close, and you get zero in return. So the goal is to go up to Jeff and the gang, say, hey, we're gonna give the American people a slice of every Amazon transaction, every Google search, every robot truck mile, every Facebook ad, and put it into your hands. And imagine what your communities would look like if everyone got $1,000 a month. Think about it right now. Look around at the people around you. What would you all spend it on? Go ahead, shout out what you'd spend $1,000 a month on.
Parks and recreation.
Loans, housing, arts, what was that? Everything. Marijuana. Well, the point is, most of that money would stay right here in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, in your communities. A little bit of it would float up to Jeff and the gang. You'd probably get an extra toaster on Amazon, but most of it would stay right here. It'd be going towards your housing, tutoring, healthcare, the occasional night out, car repairs you've been putting off, all the things that make the world go round. We would build the trickle-up economy from people, families, and communities up. So this is the vision that we have to take to the rest of the country as fast as possible. We have to build an economy that works for us. And the example I use, the freedom dividend, is my wife who's at home with our 2 children, one of whom is autistic. And what does society value her work at right now? 0. What does the market value her work at? 0. And we all know that's messed up. We know that the work she's doing is some of the most vital and challenging and important work for our future. The Democratic Party right now talks about being the party of empowering women. I'm going to say to you, the people of Minneapolis, that there's nothing better we could do to help millions of American women improve their situations from exploitative or abusive jobs or relationships than put $1,000 a month into everyone's hands. We can either keep talking about empowering women or we can do something about it, and I say we do something about it. And there is nothing stopping the majority of citizens in a democracy from declaring ourselves a dividend. Nothing at all. And that's the power we have to wake up to. If we say to our fellow Americans, look, we can make this happen, then it will happen. That's the magic of this campaign. I went from a totally anonymous entrepreneur, not like most of you never heard of me until what?
Joe
Rogan, Sam Harris, X weeks, X months ago. And now I'm polling at 3% nationwide. I'm one of only 8 candidates who's already qualified for the Democratic primary debates. And number of donations. How many of you all have donated to my campaign? That's so beautiful. The average donation to the Yang Gang is only $19. So my fans are even cheaper than Bernie's. Give it up for cheap Yang Gang. Oh, that's great. I love it. And I gotta say, if you didn't have your hand up and you donate $20 today, you will immediately be an above average member of this gang. This is a very cheap gang to join. So this is the movement towards a human-centered economy. The dividend starts out as being too good to be true, but when you start digging into the facts, when you see where we are in this technological transformation, you see that we have to start evolving in terms of the way we see this economy. That we are not inputs into this giant machine, that the economy should work for us. Now, how many of you woke up this morning and were excited about GDP? You're like, yes, it's a beautiful Sunday. I think I'm going to make a big contribution to GDP today. And our society right now is just putting on a pedestal this GDP number that's meaningless to most of you.
It's fake.
It is.
While GDP is at a record high, our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years in a row. And why has our life expectancy declined? Opiates, yes. 8 Americans are dying of drugs every hour. And then this woman said suicide, and that's the other answer. Opioid overdoses and suicides have both overtaken vehicle deaths as leading causes of death for the last 3 years. The first time in American history. And it's so rampant that our national life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years in a row. Do you all want to know the last time America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row?
Great Depression.
The Spanish flu of 1918.
Oh, wow.
We're actually back in Spanish flu territory right now. It's unusual for the life expectancy of a developed country to decline for 1 year, let alone 3. Most of the time that just keeps on going up and up as we get more advanced, but not here in America, because our economy has become this incredible, punitive, inhuman machine. And so what good is record high GDP if our people are dying earlier of suicides and drug overdoses? And as someone who's run organizations, you can never make progress if you're not measuring the right things. So if you're not excited about GDP, what might actually get you excited?
Humanity first.
Life expectancy, yes. What else? Freedom dividend, yeah, that would be exciting. $1,000.
Humanity.
Health, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, am I right? Yeah. Childhood success rates, how our kids are doing? Yeah. Income and affordability, not having this giant mountain of student loan debt that's like crushing your dreams.
Yeah.
Clean air and clean water.
Yeah.
So these are the things we should be using to measure our progress instead of worshiping this GDP number that we made up almost 100 years ago. And the inventor of GDP was a very smart guy named Simon Kuznets. It was the Great Depression. Of course we invented it during the Great Depression. The government was freaking out. They said, what are we going to do? We need a number. And then Simon Kuznets was like, okay, here's GDP. But 3 things he said. Number 1, this is a terrible measurement for national well-being and we should never use it as that. Number 2, we should include parenthood and motherhood because it's so important. And number 3, we should not include military defense spending because it adds no economic value. So of course we ignored all 3 of those things and now we're like, yes, GDP, we're gonna follow it off a cliff. Robot trucks will be great for GDP, but they're gonna be terrible for the people who drive a truck for a living and the people who work in the retail establishments. So we need to actually evolve our very measurements for the economy to things like health, life expectancy, mental health, environmental sustainability. And this is what I'm going to do as president. I'm going to go down the street to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and say, hey guys, GDP, really old, really out of date. We're going to use these measurements instead. And then every year at the State of the Union, I'm going to present those measurements to you all in a PowerPoint. I'm going to be the first president to use PowerPoint at the State of the Union.
PowerPoint.
Yes! Yes, math, the nerdiest campaign ever. PowerPoint day. But right now, our State of the Union addresses have devolved into these bizarre theater performances. Am I right? You turn it on, you're like, what am I even watching? And then you're like, and then you change the channel and be like, yeah, I'll check this out later, and then you watch something else. So under President Yang, I'm going to have measurements and I'm going to say, hey, look, this is how we're actually doing. And then this is what we can do to improve, and let's check back next year and see if we brought drug overdoses down. Let's see if we brought happiness up. Let's see if we brought engagement with work up. And then with people who move our society in that direction, then we'd actually be able to reward ourselves for that progress. We'd actually be excited about progress in a way we are not excited about GDP. So these are the big moves we have to make together as a country. We have to start making a trickle-up, human-centered economy that works for us. And we have to start measuring our progress very, very differently. Now, Donald Trump's our president today in part because he got the problems essentially correct. He went and said, look, things are rough for a lot of Americans and a lot of people do not see a path forward. And what was the Democratic response in 2016? It was more like things are generally fine to great. And the Democrats lost the election and almost lost here in Minnesota because Americans did not actually believe that things are that great. And when you look at the numbers, they are generally correct. 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, including many people here in this park. 57% can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. And this mindset of scarcity has swept our country. And if you can't pay your bills, it actually makes it so that you're less optimistic, less rational, less forward-looking. The studies have shown, if you look at the data on what happens when you can't pay your bills, it actually reduces your functional intelligence by 13 IQ points, or 1 standard deviation. So if you have the sneaking feeling that a lot of your fellow citizens are getting less reasonable and less rational, you're probably right. Because we've introduced this pervasive financial insecurity into our people, and then now we're starting to turn on each other. And this is what we must undo. We have to get this economic boot off of our throats. Am I right, Minneapolis? Yeah. So Donald Trump won because he got the problems right, but his solutions are the opposite of what we need. What are his solutions? We're going to build a wall. We're going to turn back time. We're going to bring back the jobs. And I'm saying we have to do the exact opposite of that. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society, and I am the man to beat Donald Trump because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. That's right.
And Juliet. And Juliet.
That's beautiful.
And Juliet. And Juliet.
All the best.
And Juliet. And Juliet. And Juliet.
So if you ask Democrats their number one criteria for a candidate, it is the person who can beat Donald Trump.
Andrew Day.
Oh, sorry.
And Juliet.
And what they're going to figure out over the coming weeks and months is that the man or woman who can beat Donald Trump is a candidate who's already getting independents,
Yeah.
libertarians,
Yeah.
Trump voters.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Trump voters are shot. Democrats
Yeah.
and progressives.
Yeah.
We can build a coalition of all points in the political spectrum. This is how we actually win in 2020. We have to not just focus on our own silos. We have to speak to all of America. And as people see, there's a guy named Nate Silver. You guys who know who Nate Silver is, 538?
Yeah.
And what he said, wait a minute, let me break it down, because Nate Silver is highly, highly analytical. He was like, Andrew Yang's polling at 3%, has raised over $3 million in increments of only $19 each, and no one has ever heard of him. And then he looked at that and said, based on those three things, we cannot discount the possibility that as more people find out about Andrew Yang, his campaign grows and grows and grows and wins the whole thing. And that is the path ahead, because no one knows what our ceiling is. No one knows what our ceiling is, and we're going to find out. We're going to change history in 2020. Because it is not left, it is not right, it is forward. And that's where we're going to take the country in 2020. Thank you, Minneapolis. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Megan. I'm coming down. Thank you all.
Just your destination. Though you may find from time to time
No, just
complication.
over here. Take this video. The video. All you have to do is point
And take it to truth.
Will you hold my crib over?